Okay, first to know, this again is a basic introduction about takeoff speeds. The speeds we're talking about today will always follow in that order. V1, VR or rotate, and V2. And these speeds apply no matter if you're sitting in a little twin-engine Cessna or a Boeing 747, the speed definition is for either plane the same. Okay, let's look at V1. Imagine yourself in the cockpit of your plane and applying takeoff thrust to your engine, and as you gently accelerate down the runway, you come to a point where you reach V1. So by the book, V1 is defined as the speed beyond which the takeoff should no longer be aborted. Meaning that in case you experience any trouble with your plane before reaching V1, the classic example would be an engine failure, you would immediately abort your takeoff and would apply all necessary matters to bring the aircraft to a stop. Although the use of full reverse thrust is not mandatory. I'll come back to that in a second. So in this video here, this Airbus A319 applied takeoff thrust and due to a technical malfunction had to abort the takeoff prior reaching V1. Just listen to the sound of the engines. Now the auto brake system comes active and immediately applies pressure to the brake cylinders. The grounded spoilers are deployed, so are the reversers, and the plane and crew come to a safe stop on the runway. The smoke you can see here is coming from the brakes as they are the primary force slowing down the aircraft. Now let's say there were to be an engine failure, so one of the reversers would be inoperative and therefore full reverse thrust can't be added to the braking measures as mentioned before. Because V1 needs to be calculated prior every takeoff, taking into account airplane weight, runway length, wing flap setting, engine thrust used, runway surface contamination and environmental factors, and even the aircraft brakes, to assure yourself that any given failure prior reaching V1, you'll have enough runway left over to come to a complete stop. Now if it's just a minor failure, you can continue the takeoff, but that's a whole nother video about the stop or go decision making. And besides that, this is one of the reasons why the captain keeps his hands on the throttle until the pilot monitoring calls out V1, and then he moves his hands away from the throttle to not inadvertently abort the takeoff after V1 in case of a failure. So in case you experience any serious malfunction after V1, you would have to commit yourself to continue the takeoff, otherwise a takeoff abort will lead to a runway overrun and could severely damage your plane.